I'm Marcos,
I'm Kaylin.
and this is our criminal profile on Charles Manson.
So Manson was born in Ohio, in the USA. His mother was a 16-year-old alcoholic and prostitute named Kathleen Maddox. They're not totally sure who his father was, but he got his name from his stepfather, William Manson.
Early childhood and family life. Charles was placed into a boys' school at 12 years old, and Charles was soon living on the streets and surviving through petty crime. As a teenager, Manson began spending time in prison. When he wasn't in prison, he would attend reform schools. Manson was described by probation reports as suffering from a marked degree of rejection, instability, and psych trauma, and constantly striving for status and securing some sort of love. He was also described as unpredictable.
So for his early childhood crimes, his early life was full of a lot of petty crimes. Some of those included pimping, passing stolen checks, burglary, and armed robbery, just to name a few. And by the age of 32, he'd already spent half of his life in prison.
For Manson's first marriage, in between his prison sentences, Manson met a 17-year-old hospital server named Rosaline Jane Wills. They married in 1955. The couple moved to California and had a son together, Charles Manson Jr. By 1956, Wills left with their child to be with a new lover and divorced Manson 2 years later. In the 1990s, Manson Jr. would commit suicide.
So, Leona Stevens, also known as Candy, was his second wife, and he had a second child with her named Charles Luther. And while he was with Leona, he was given a 10-year suspended sentence for forging a treasury check and then was later arrested for breaking his probation terms.
The third mother of Manson's child is Manson did not marry a third woman, but did have a relationship, Mary Bruner. Manson met Mary while on parole. She was one of the first people involved in the cult. She allowed Manson to move into her apartment where the two became lovers, in which they had a Manson's third child, Valentine Michael Manson, who they nicknamed Pooh Bear. Mary participated in the first murder, the Hinman murder.
So, the Manson family cult. Manson started the family cult when he moved to California in 1967, and the cult eventually moved to a deserted ranch in San Francisco. His cult had around 100 followers, and the main people in the cult were a group of young girls. The members were heavily influenced by drugs, and they all believed that they were in some kind of race war. Manson ordered the members to go on a killing spree in order to win this race war that he had thought up. And within a span of a few weeks, the family cult had gone on a crazy killing spree, killing many people, and we'll talk about them next. And then this just shows some of the main people in the family cult.
For the first murder the cult committed is Gary Hinman. He was born December 24th, 1934 in Colorado, and he was associated with the Manson family. On July 31st, Gary was found dead in his home. He was stabbed 2 times in the heart and had a massive slash across the left side of his face. His house had been robbed, as well as written in Hinman's blood on the wall read, "Political Piggy." The police had no leads for the case and resorted to naming it as a hippie murder in LA. There are many different opinions on why he was killed. However, Manson stated he was killed over money and estate. He claims that he owed the family. Gary's murderer, Bobby Boseal, was caught on the highway driving one of Gary's cars after being arrested for a false driving license. He was then convicted for the murder of Gary Hinman. And these are the knives he used, and this was the front door of Gary's house. For the worst and second killings were the Tate murders. On August 9th to 10th, members of the Manson family carried out the murders of 5 different people. Actress Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, along with Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and Wojciech Fryrowski. The weapons used were a .22 revolver and clasp-type buck knives. These weapons were used by the cult members Susan Atkins, Patricia Kernwinkle, Linda Casbin, and Tex Watson. The 4 perpetrators were ordered by Manson to head to the home and destroy everyone in it and make it as gruesome as possible. They arrived at the home at midnight and proceeded to break into the grounds of the home. The cult members rounded everyone into the living room and bound them together by the neck with a long nylon rope, as well as binding their hands with towels. Jay Sebring was shot first and then stabbed several times. Fryrowski was then able to free his hands and fought his way to the front door, where he was shot several times in the head and stabbed. Abigail Folger was taken to another room where she was able to escape but was caught up to and stabbed 28 times to death on the lawn. Sharon Tate pleaded to be held hostage until she could deliver the baby. She was stabbed 16 times and succumbed to her injuries. Atkins wrote "pig" on the front door of the Tates as ordered by Manson to leave something witchy and similar behind to the Hinman murder. And this is the Tate's house and the living room.
So the LaBianca murders happened on August 10th of 1969. Manson and 6 of the other members of the cult were involved in this murder case. Lino and Rosemary LaBianca were in their home when the members of the cult family broke into their house and tied them up. The members then stabbed them to death and left their house. And it also said that Manson didn't personally kill them, but he ordered the cult members to do so. And this is also the house where the murder happened, and they are writing on the walls again.
The Donald Shea murder, or Shorty Shea. Donald Shea was born September 18th, 1933 in Massachusetts. He pursued a career in acting, but eventually made his way into becoming a stuntman. Manson decided to have Shea murdered because he believed Shea had reported the crimes to the police due to the ranch being raided by the police. The Mansons considered him a snitch. Shea was murdered August 26, 1969, more than 2 weeks after the Tate murders. He was lured to a remote spot on the ranch where he was taken and beaten with a pipe and stabbed, brutally tortured, and killed. Shea's body was then left in the area.
So in October of 1969, Manson was arrested along with 27 other people for car theft. To start, they never suspected that he was involved with any murders, but that changed while he was in custody. One of the other cult members who was also arrested was talking about her involvement in multiple murders while they were in custody, and the information got out to the guards, and that led to Manson getting sent to trial.
The Tate/LaBianca murder trial. The trial began July 24th, 1970 to January 25th, 1971. It had been the longest and most expensive trial in American history. Manson enters the court sporting a fresh X wound on his forehead before stating, "I have X'd myself from your world." Linda Casbin was brought to the stand as she was sworn as a witness and was granted immunity. She would stay on the stand for a total of 18 days. Linda will go on to describe her experience and involvement in the Tate murders, along with everyone else involved. After 2 weeks of testimony, the prosecution rested its case. When the trial resumed, Charles Manson wished to testify before co-defendants did. He testified first without the jury present. Manson had over an hour-long testimony. The jury deliberated a week before returning its verdict on January 25th. The jury found all defendants guilty. The death sentence was imposed but would never end up going through due to California Supreme Court ruling that the death penalty was unconstitutional. And these are some of the photos from the trial.
So Manson's death on November 19th of 2017, Manson died in a California hospital. He was 83 years old and died of natural causes. And just touching on his final conviction, on January 26th of 1971, Manson was convicted for the murders of 7 people, and he spent the rest of his life in prison. And that's it.